I've been really going through it again, going through a lot of bullshit. Things have not been good. I was dealing with a lot of stress, a lot of bullshit. And I kind of noticed this pattern that when you have kind of an experiential understanding, be that whatever type of experience, it's a learning curve. But that learning curve also involves a point of self-reflection. Some people call it a non-self. I don't know. I tend to call it an original self. I don't know how to explain that. You know, there's an original self and there's like a universal self. But to say that there's no self is, I don't know if that's true. Kind of what is considered a very fundamental cornerstone of Buddhism. I don't know if that's true. I think if anything, I'm very pragmatic. But I think a valuable lesson is not, you know, while someone like me might go through a lot of shit, there's no point in smearing it around. It doesn't accomplish anything. If it accomplished something, I thought I'd do it. I tend to put it in relation to being a door or a doormat. You know, you can be the door or you can be the doormat. You know, usually the doormat says welcome. Sometimes it says F off. But, you know, people wipe their feet on the doormat. People walk through a door. Sometimes that door's closed. Sometimes I'm a closed door. Sometimes I'm an open door. Right? But sometimes I'm the doormat. They're kind of like all variables in a situation. But I definitely feel like tonight we parked our bikes somewhere, and I've been miserable. I've been absolutely miserable. I'm dealing with a lot of anxiety and anger and depression. And I went out to go to buy something because I needed it. And it was a deal. And coming back, we stopped off somewhere and we locked up our bikes. And we're sitting inside. And this guy comes up and starts trying to see what he can rip off our bikes. Like he literally must have seen us walk into the restaurant. And literally like is trying to rip off from our bikes, you know. And we have these red bags on there that I keep tools in case the bikes break down, because we can't afford a car. And but he's there and he's going right through it. He must have saw me trying to come out and go towards him, and he disappeared in the process and went up by some trees and went further down. And I came over and I ran over to there was a fence between me and him. I ran over him. I threw every four-letter word I had in my head at the time at him, right? And this cocky son of a bitch is just walking off. He's just walking off. So I'm thinking, maybe he didn't take anything. So I go back and I check the bikes, and sure enough, he stole some of my tools, right? So I booked it over around the trees, chasing him. And I was coming after him, and I shouted at him, you know, you better run. right? And he did. He started running. Chase was on. And I ran after him blocks. And then he like went into like he got caught in a cul-de-sac and went around a house. He dropped his blanket. I grabbed his blanket. I went around the corner with him. Some homeless native dude, a young guy. And he's like, and I was shouting, you know, profanity and threats at him the whole time. Because you can be the door, you can be the doormat. Right? Sometimes you have to be an open door. Sometimes it has to be a closed door. Sometimes you have to be a welcome mat that says welcome. Sometimes the mat has to say F you. Right? And I went around back, you know, and I kind of like looked at him. And he's like, I'll give it back to you. I'll give it back to you. He pulls it out, right? This is really dumb of me because I'm in the back here. I can't even make out this guy's face. I make out his accent. I know he's a native dude. And it's just kind of go time. And I have all this anxiety and all this anger and depression, you know, and futility pent up in me, right? I think if he picked a fight with me, I would have fought him. Maybe. I don't know. It didn't come to that. He gave it back to me. And I looked him straight in the face, took the tools out of his hand, and I said, you dropped your blanket. And I gave it to him, and I said, have a good night. And I walked away. You know, like, I sort of feel like when you are a minority, right? When you're a minority like I am, and I'm not a minority of 3, right? But I'm a minority. Same with Native people, you know. We go through a lot of crap. We go through a lot of crap. You know, I often say the only way that my life could be worse if I was a Native or a Black trans girl. And so, you know, like this treating somebody with a little bit of respect as opposed to smearing the situation around, smearing shit around, making things worse, I think it's more beneficial. And I think that's something that's programmed into me through everything that I've been through. I think that's experiential understanding that I've been through. And I went back. We were sitting in Denny's, and I came out, but he's sitting there right in the curb. Looked like he's eating like pepperoni and cheese that he ripped off. But he's got the balls to be back here, sitting on the curb. Now, granted, I was nice to him, right? I don't think he sees me as a threat. Maybe that's a good thing, you know? And I was walking away, and I turned around, I pulled a 20 out of my pocket, and I went back to him, and I gave it to him. I said, get yourself something to eat. He obviously had some stuff. It looked like he had just hijacked some stuff out of a store and booked it. I honestly think being part of the solution versus being part of the problem, you know, being somebody who offers, even if it's in vain, even if it's pointless, being somebody who offers a reprieve, you know. I could have called the cops, but his dumbass is sitting right here. I could have kicked him in the head, you know. Probably would have attacked me. You know, maybe I could have defended myself. The guy couldn't outrun me. Probably a smoker. Probably smokes crack or something. Sometimes they call these types of people crack gophers. You know, these type of people who like do everything they possibly. They'll go through your tailpipe to get to your glove compartment and see what they can rip off in there. And it's the type of people who like try to break in, get in through the lobby door of your apartment building. I call them crack gophers because they're looking for anything that's not nailed down that they can steal. But I also feel like, I mean, I could make it all Buddhisty or something, but I just like, so many other people put me through the gears, right? And try to destroy someone like me, right? And I go through so much like bullying and hatred and just general fucking malaise in one person's life. I've been through so much fucking shit. I don't think many people could fucking live through it. I didn't fucking deserve any of it for just being me. Neither did this guy. You know, I know what it's like. You know, when you've got nothing to lose. You know, I tell people a lot of the time, right? The amount of crap that I've been through. The amount of fucking trauma I've fucking been through. You know? I'm here out of spite. Any logical bitch would have fucking killed themselves by now. I'm here out of spite. It's not going to accomplish anything. You know, in Buddhist terms, did it do any good? You know, I guess you could compare it to karma. I don't know that there's any karma generated out of it. I don't know that there's any in Buddhism and Hinduism. They talk about merit all the time, acquired merit. Did I acquire any merit at this? I wasn't looking for any. I don't think I acquired any merit of it. Maybe merit in terms of like how I've trained my brain. You know, again, it's this reflection of self. You know, as a Buddhist, I ask, who's the observer? When you're talking about enlightenment, you know, they talk about a non-self. Who's there at that time? Who's there at that time observing? It's not the same as disassociating. Someone's still very much in control. Someone's still putting one foot in front of the other. They know exactly what they're doing. There's an observer. With a non-discriminatory mind. You know, and you could talk about compassion or something. I think it's worth talking about compassion. You know, I also think you have to have compassion for yourself. Compassion isn't always kind words and hugs and donations. You know, in that moment, who's benefiting from the act of compassion? Even if it's here, who's benefiting? Is that not a form of greed? Is greed not something that we all know? I don't think you can exist without it. If you can't exist without greed, how do you exist without clinging and aversion? Aversion. Being adverse to things. You know, like I'm incredibly resilient, but I've been through a lot of shit. And I'm going through a lot of shit right now. But I also feel like sometimes being resilient is a problem. Punching down never works. Punching down never works. You know, if you're punching down, it's not because you're trying to protect yourself. You want to protect yourself, you punch up. Or if you have to stoop to punch down, punch somebody else who's beneath you, right? You just work. You don't need to. You don't need to protect yourself from somebody who's in the disadvantage. It's only when they have an advantage, when they have power over you, then you have to protect yourself. You know, like, in a very simplistic way, without any philosophy or practice or anything else, you know, in a very simple layman's terms, of what advantage is smearing shit around? Of what advantage is kicking the bitch beneath you in the teeth? You know, I don't know that any bad karma is going to become of it to you. I don't think there's going to be any reaction. There may be. That would be a logical assumption. You punch somebody in the face, they punch you back. But I think sometimes in a very simple act, you know, of being understanding, having some empathy, having a little bit of compassion, having a little bit of forgiveness is beneficial, as long as you're not looking to gain from it in some fashion. It has to be innate. It has to be something you innately understand. But I think at the same time, a person only deals so much. You can only be so resilient. You know, person's not made of steel.